Okay, welcome back everyone. So thank you very much for giving me the time and also the attention. I hope everyone get some useful things from the first talk. Anyway, the second talk I will cover about artificial intelligence and entertainment science. What are the empathic trend that we feel that going to be very important in the future research. Uh, Basically, these are the outline for this talk. Uh, So the first part I would like to cover on the history of how game and AI come about, how they become the Drosophila, which is the fruit fly of AI research. So the first stage of AI actually have very how to say close relation with how chess being become very broad or important game in the history of the development of computer AI. At the time of in the 17th or 18th century, I think, Baron Wolfgang actually produced what we call as the Turk. The Turk actually is a automaton, which is a kind of like a mechanical machine that play chess very well based on the operator inside the machine. At that time, people doesn't know that they have an operator inside that machine. They feel that the machine move by itself. Although it already been disproved as a hoax, uh, instead of a real automaton machine that play the chess. It still kind of like spark an idea or interest in the area that is it possible to actually automaton or machine to play this kind of game, because chess at that time are considered kind of like a board game that are very intellectual and very human game. And later on in the next decade of the same century, Charles Babbage, the one that produced what we call as a differential machine, I think, the first calculator, first mechanical calculator actually, uh, leads to fast advancement of the development of computer. And from there you have Ada Lovelace that actually become the first programmer in history that actually produce computer program using the, I think, punch card, I think. She introduced this kind of language so that they can actually do a program within a medical mechanical computer. And then in the early 20th century, Leonardo Torres, one of the Spanish inventor, if I'm not mistaken, produced an actual chess machine, a mechanical chess machine, that able to play a few steps within the chess, but able to play in any position at the end of the game. So they call this uh, uh, mating game, because in chess, when you try to finish the game against your opponent, they call checkmate, right? So mate and checkmate, right? So if you checkmate, then you're unable to do any move at all. But if you mate, then you have to move your king. So this machine able to do at that point, meaning that uh, when the king are being mated by another pieces in the chessboard, you can do this with some human assistant to move the pieces based on the machine recommendation, and later replaced by an automated mechanical machine to move the pieces. And then the second stage is where computer become a prominent part of our culture, where Claude E. Shannon, father of computer chess and father of information theory, I think, he actually have a very deep interest in producing a chess AI program, and he actually proposed a minimax algorithm, which is an important algorithm that not only consider your own move but your opponent move in the future. You know, that algorithm very prominent within the game, artificial intelligence in game development. And he also estimate the number of possible number of move within the chess as the Shannon number, which is 10 to the power 120 possible move available within the chess game itself. And then in 1955, Alan Newell, I think he able to produce the earliest chess program. He used the logic and cognition uh, method, which is I think using a COBOL or Fortran, I think, if I'm not mistaken, Fortran programming language that are symbol based at that time. And then he also become, father of human computer interaction. And later on, Arthur Lee Samuel is the most important researcher that popularized, machine learning term, and he developed the field of games and AI, where he produced the first algorithm that play think checkers. I think he used the rote learning and alphabet pruning, which is a method that enhances the minimal algorithms and play the checker program that he named as Samuel, as the program that play checkers. And later on, John McCarthy popularized AI term. If you know the Dartmouth conference, right? If you're from AI field, then you already know this. Dartmouth conference is where AI term are being popularized in first in the history. And John McCarthy also the one that designed uh, leads programming. And another accelerator that make AI and games become very prominent because of the Levi Beck, uh, friend of John McCarthy, actually bet that no computer can win against human in 10 years. And they increased from 500 pounds to 100, 1,250 pounds later. And that that trend actually continue up to 3 decades, if I'm not mistaken. And this actually helped accelerate AI research. Yeah, of course, David Levi itself actually is a Scottish chess champion. He played against Chess 4.7 10 years later uh, from the first Levi bet. He won, and the bet increases and continue for several years. And because of that, the pursuit of game and AI become very prominent. For example, Logistello in 1997, Deep Blue, Tacos, Watson, AlphaGo, Librettos, OpenAI 5, all of these AI actually able to defeat human champion within within each of these game. Example, Logistello is actually uh, the program play Othello program or Othello game and won uh, all the matches. And Deep Blue won 3 against 2, I think. Tacos, I'm not sure because Tacos actually is the program that Professor Ida in our laboratory now uh, actually develop and play against human champion in shogi, I think the Japanese chess. And then Watson, developed by IBM, that play against human competitor in I think Jeopardy game, if I'm not mistaken. And then AlphaGo in the Go board game, Librettos in the poker game, and OpenAI 5, I think in Dota 2 game. And from there, actually, the Alpha Zero have been developed, where it become much more prominent and leads to, not only in game development, but also in science. Because Alpha Zero is where the AI program uh, learn certain tasks without any human intervention, and only been given a rule without any human knowledge. Previously, we have AlphaGo. Right? AlphaGo actually incorporates some human knowledge to actually make the program very efficient. But in AlphaZero, there are no uh, human knowledge. It learned by itself. As you can see from the training step, improve by itself until it become very strong compared to the previous iteration of the program. And it plays again the strongest AI program that ever existed within the game community itself and defeat them in thousands of games, I think. And then later become AlphaFold that produce how to say a very high accuracy of uh, prediction on the uh, thing protein folding. Uh, I'm not sure if some of you, if you work on bioinformatics, then you might know this better than me. Anyway, the program able to compete against human one in producing a new protein, and this protein actually later on become the precursor of a new antibiotic in the medicine field. And now we have kind of like DAL E2. Think we already have DAL E3, if I'm not mistaken. I'm not sure. Maybe DAL E2. And we have the chat GPT and so on, right? So these are very, you know, what we call as disruptive AI that actually able to, you know, compete against human expert. So that's kind of like a summary of 247 years of AI in games intertwined, where it started from the 17th century, tried to imitate chess player, then become the birth of AI games and computing research field, and AI player beats grandmasters in the 20th century, and the early 21st century AI program able to solve very difficult problem similar to what human facing, like chemical synthesis, beat Turing test, and generate some form of art. And this kind of like games itself is kind of like a fruit fly in genetics. That's why I call games is called as Drosophila of AI. Because in genetic research, Drosophila is actually a fruit fly species because they are very convenient uh, in genetic research because they breed quickly and they can produce a lot of generation within hours or within days. So we can genetic researcher can actually observe how evolution, changes from one generation to another. But games also do the same for AI because games are very convenient that provide an easy comparison for computer performance against actual people and even against itself. Then entertainment science come where we try to systematically discover what makes us entertaining whenever we actually being presented with some form of media. So for example, what are the composition of entertainment actually? So it composed of data analytic and theories on perform on the content that are filmed, written, recorded, or programmed. In a way, you can see that games is part of this entertainment media, entertainment content. And entertainment science actually is conducting data analytic and producing a theory on this type of content. So, some of the important characteristic of entertainment is actually utility and hedonic, meaning that utility is something that we need to use it for our everyday use and so on. But for hedonic, actually something that for our own entertainment or our own how to say uh, to increase our happiness and so on. So you need to before you can actually analyze an entertainment, you need to characterize them first so that you know that these are considered as utility or hedonic. So uh, one of the researcher in this book actually have done the analysis on this based on some say questionnaire and also objective data calculation, you know, and they produce this model that show that this kind of entertainment media is considered as high hedonic benefit but low utility. But for this type of uh, media or things have high utility but low hedonic benefit, and some maybe have high both. You know, so what are the quadrant of that certain entertainment media fall to? It's very important to know. And then entertainment characteristic, you have utility and session. So these are example of first and second run of a show. They don't really mention what kind of show, but you can see that at the first time of any entertainment media being given to the people or being seen by the people, the the viewer are very high. For the second run, the viewer are lower. So it means that at some point, certain thing become we find it useful, but at the same time, it become less useful when we present it the second time. So or repeated exposure on that thing. You know? So it's important to identify the session function of the entertainment media. Let's say your utility of certain thing is good, is this line, and these are the bad, you know, which is the if we normalize this into a positive number. So if we combine the utility function of both either good and bad, you can see that it become negative at some point, you know. So repeated consumption over time actually makes people satiate. So you need to avoid uh you know being uh avoid repeating too much something that are good, you know, because if you done that, then something that are good become bad in a way. So I think you understand my point. Anyway, another entertainment characteristic is the culture and choice. So meaning that some entertainment product define culture, some entertainment product makes choices to other people, because people might form shared attitude or taste towards certain uh, entertainment product, and because of that they choose this kind of they prefer this kind of product compared to others, and some other might have their own attitude or taste or belief in certain things. These are what we call for example of brand loyalty or taste, you know. And then another culture that developed around this is what we call as fandom, which is for example like Trekkie, right? Trekkie referring to people that really love Star Trek, you know. So if you compare Star Trek with a Star Wars, then Trekkie people will find that very offended, very offensive, you know. So yeah, that's what fandom. And then social identity, meaning that in a way, this kind of entertainment product or entertainment media uh, identify with them, identify with certain people or certain behavior or certain choices. Yeah, so these are another characteristic, important characteristic of entertainment. So when we know already the characteristic of entertainment, how can we judge certain entertainment product? So in order to do that, usually the quality of entertainment product will have certain attribute. So if let's say this attribute involve certain people, right, or certain thing or certain product or certain actor, for example, in this case, let's say this example from a movie entertainment media. Uh, so if let's say we know a certain actor within this product, right? Uh, although this product not yet published, for example, not yet out in the market. So how can we know that this product is have some quality, right? So usually we do this by, considering the attribute of different different product of similar type. For example, like let's say this actor star in this movie, in this movie. So we search the same, the same movie acted by this by the same actor, and we can actually induce certain attribute from there. That's what we call as quasi search, and this actually what we call as considering the proportion of uh, search and experience attribute. So search attribute is what we assess before we actually buy certain thing or before we view certain thing by considering what are the thing that we can see from the book from outside or from the external point of view, and the experience which we assess after later when we actually buy the thing, and the thing from previous movie this actor actually act on. Right. So yeah, so yeah, using quasi search, we call it. It's kind of like a signal. And then another is taste and culture. As I said just now, is very subjective. Some people might prefer based on their ages. Let's say some age actually influence the preference of certain thing. For example, song, movie, and novel are preferred differently whenever they uh, compared to different age group. But uh, song might change throughout this. Let's say, you know, uh, for younger adult, they might prefer songs compared to novels and movies. You know, these are what we call as cultural capital, where people tend to follow what are the latest in the social community, and what are the education level of certain people actually influence what are the culture that we are interested on, and maybe sometimes family upbringing also influence. And then national culture, sometimes we might prefer certain things because of our cultural congruence, meaning that what are the shared culture between our people. Let's say Malay might prefer certain comedy movies compared to Chinese. Chinese might prefer, how to say, maybe kind of like uh, what we call reality show and so on. Yeah, it depends. So it might it might it might changes throughout different culture and different niche of people. And then the judging the entertainment sometimes involve balancing the risk and expected return. So usually when you're investing, in certain thing that you are uncertain about, right? You're required to have a proper trade-off between uh, risk and expected return. So these are some plotted data based on previous study show that animation have the highest risk and highest return, and compared to other type of movies. These are example of film media entertainment. So uh, so basically, of course, high risk versus low return, and uh, low risk high return as well, right? You want uh, low risk high return as well, but you cannot achieve that every time. So you need to consider the trade off by mixing the low risk portfolio with high risk portfolio, meaning that you want to you want to have a fantasy, to say, because fantasy compared to thriller, fantasy has better higher risk but better return. So but your work focusing on thriller, for example. So you might want to consider the proportion of fantasy thriller. by mixing the portfolio, meaning that instead of fantasy alone or thriller alone, you mix having fantasy thriller, meaning that more fantasy, less thriller, or more fantasy, or the middle, actually 5-5, which is fantasy and thriller are the same. And in this case, that actually is the best because it has the highest you know expected return and lowest risk. And then how you judge entertainment? Sometimes you have to consider emotional and imaginary facet, meaning that some perception might cause us feel uh, very pleasant or not pleasant, and sometimes we are being aroused or negatively aroused, depending on our emotional facet. And uh, facet here is that it might involve, you know, uh, sense making or abstraction by, considering what are the skill and challenges uh, of that of using that particular entertainment media. And then n- the last but not least is to when we judge entertainment, we have to identify the quality and technology that being shared between the media itself. So, for example, these are how to say percentage of the book being read and the expected feeling that people feel, level of happiness throughout the reading. And these are example of I think comparison between 20 books to the target books. As you can see that there are some study, the quality being shared by many of this book actually is like this. I mean that at earlier point of this book is less less happy perceived by the people, but more at the end of the book. Some book focusing on something like this, and some like this, some like this, right? But the important part is that the trend actually show that this quality are being shared by different people or different books of the same type. And if you want to, you know, develop the thing or certain entertainment media to we have to have this kind of shared quality so that we understand why this entertainment accepted by some people and so on. Then again, when we try to do something entertaining, right, we have to consider the uncanny valley of realism, meaning that something might be better to be like human, but other thing might not be. We might perceive it negatively. So how to avoid this, right? So try to move this chart, you know, by having less emotion and so on, so that we can actually maintain this instead of going down this uncanny valley. Then of course we need to combine innovation and imitation. So let's say this A is actually the innovation, B is the imitation. So if we combine this, make sure it's not overtaking one or the other, but try to balance out both of them, so that people doesn't feel that you are copying from other people. At the same time, uh, you're producing something new or very novel thing as well. So now I come to what we did in our lab actually related to the entertainment science point of view. So we try to bridge AI and entertainment science now, because AI previously I've done AI search and simulation in my master work involving cloud application network. And then later on, I come to, you know, conducting simulation and optimization in assembly line balancing. And all of these are good in generating, evaluating feasible solution and focusing on optimal performance and functional utility. But they neglected the human factor, meaning that uh, I didn't have any, something that very contributing towards human development. So in a way, that's why I moved to game informatics. So game informatics actually focusing on data analytics, which is kind of similar to entertainment science, but it incorporate also AI intelligence search and some part of simulation as well. And because of that, by incorporating all of this in the artificial intelligence, let's say framework with the entertainment science, we actually produce a field that we call as game informatics. So our current work focusing on what we call as game progress model, where we use information progress in the game, meaning that let's say we start the game until the end of the game, we represent this information as a 0 and 1, normalize it as a 0 and 1. Then the amount of uncertainty is actually over time, is actually what uh, defined as XT here. So from 0 to the capital T, the end of the game. These are proportion of amount of uncertainty we actually achieve, meaning that whenever we play the game, we start with 100% uncertainty and we try to reduce that until we are certain that we're going to win the game or lose the game. Doesn't matter. The outcome doesn't matter here. The important part is the process. So we use this formula and we try to find the acceleration because the linear model or the linear path actually doesn't really doesn't feel very realistic, right? So because we people sometimes we play the game fast pace, sometimes slow pace, and sometimes we mix up, and sometimes we change, sometimes we make mistakes, sometimes we take advantage. We have better advantage compared to our opponent. So the process changes throughout the game. So that's where N comes in, meaning that some proportion of the game might be increasing and might be decreasing compared depending on the progression of the game. So by considering the second derivative, we can actually uh, you know find the speed, you know how fast we actually change this information from uncertainty to certainty, and we lead to this formulation where square root n minus 1 over t. And at this moment, n we don't know yet. Okay, and because of that, we try to model two-player board game using the move selection model. So move selection model, if you're making a move within the game, right, we have a lot of option to make. So by having some level of skill, we can reduce this option to only the option that are feasible for us to move at that moment. So because of this, we might have one or more solution, at least at the small b. And because all of these are valid solution, we can just take one by chance, randomly. So that's what move selection model is. And we try to estimate, you know, using skill by having plausible candidate. Yeah, but if you can see, the move can break down to a lot of other move, right? So using best case analysis estimate, very strong AI program, meaning that there are no mistake in the move made by the program. We can estimate the B is approximately close to square root of B for the board case to play a board game. So in a way, uh, this uh, B is kind of similar to N. the assumption here is that we make B equal to N, where we obtain GR, which is what we call as game refinement theory. So this leads to a shared space between different games, where the Scrabble, board game, sport game, and so on, we define the scoring option, branching factor, and the total score and game length, ST or D. And using this formula, based on the approximation just now, we achieve this value, and we know that some game is you know within this GR zone. This GR zone actually is where how to say where the uncertainty are the best described for games that are very sophisticated, meaning that the game are well defined, are well developed throughout time. So game that outside of this zone actually more than uh more than 0.07 are chance based. But GR that uh not more than 0.07, less than 0.07, sorry, it's chance based. But GR that more than 0.08 are skill based, meaning that you require very high level of skill. And for chance based, require very high intuition to actually predict certain outcome of the game. So we develop this further by considering the metaphor of physics in playing, using the move selection model just now, so that instead of considering or we try to develop the physics in playing using the physics method where object have some motion, and this motion actually involves certain field, right? Field like magnetic field and so on. So we try to translate this or analogically define this in the in game, where the object is actually the information. Motion is motion, the same motion, because we're trying to describe the metaphor of this physics in playing. And then the field might refer to what people or the emotion involved, and so on. So that's where we define motion in mind model, where y is the displacement, which is the source uncertainty. T time is the length, because T here doesn't necessarily refer to time, but refer to step, number of uh number of move, and so on, become the length of the game. Then we can get the velocity and mass, we define as difficulty rate, where we define this as a dimension of challenge, where the basic assumption is that m plus v equal to 1, based on zero sum assumption of game. So zero sum game is where whatever the outcome you and your opponent make will lead to a 1. So if let's say one side get the score, the other side won't get the score. So that's why it leads to 1. Or if let's say you can break down to decimal point as well. So we use that zero sum assumption to become the how to say the foundation of this definition of motion in mind model. So in board game and scoring game, we define velocity and so on, and we can get acceleration, momentum, and potential energy, and so on. And of course, we need to define differences between theories as well, because in a way, game theory as well have their own term and own calculation, and we try to how to say differentiate ourselves compared to game theory. Our our game refinement focus on sophistication and entertainment, while the target focusing on optimization and understanding compared to optimality. And the perspective is more on design and experience, not the player. So in a way, game refinement, considering how well thing changes based on the current timing and setting of the game. But the motion in mind focus on the context of the game. while the uh, game theory focus on the payoff, which is the how to say the outcome. So we apply this to long-term decision making to determine stability in games. Where let's say if we have several moves, right? One move might changes whatever we select here because of the different changes we make later on. So might if we choose the right one, right? So it will less likely to change because they are less it's much more stable. We call it stability measure. Because, uh, and differences between this is showing that some differences might refer as shallow and deep move, and these are what we call shallow move. Deep move when we consider multiple number of move ahead of time. So amateur player usually consider only shallow move because they can easily be updated every time because they have a lot of option, you know, because of that particular choice they make earlier in the game. But for expert player, they cannot easily change their move because whatever they make the move already sufficiently stable. They cannot change whatever the outcome that they make, you know. So because of that, we use conspiracy number search and proof number to identify this kind of decision. And then later on, we use this long-term experience in case study of arcade game, where we arcade game is considered as infinite game. They play continuously and can in the for the purpose of continuity compared to finite game like chess and so on. They have the end game, but the infinite game they ask you to play and go on and go on as highest as possible until you cannot go on. So we actually apply the motion in mind just now to identify this kind of game where we identify several forward game and backward game such as the brick car racing, Pong, Flappy Bird, and Tetris thing. So Tetris more forward game, meaning that it asks you to be how to say plan ahead to play the game. But brick car racing doesn't care, just based on how well you perform previously will affect your future state. So uh, arcade game or infinite game are much more entertaining when you consider the forward information model, you know, and usually implies that because you have sufficient speed and proper interval within the game, so that if you have this sufficient speed and proper interval, the game become much more entertaining for the game for the player, and the player will tend to be attracted to continue to play the game again and again. So this leads to previously we call game velocity, rate of change of winning or scoring, and then we have game acceleration, rate of change of attractiveness, the derivative of this, and we have another derivative. We call this as game jerk or jog, which is the rate of change of surprise, meaning that if your attractiveness changes, throughout time, right, it leads to some surprises. So yeah, that's the analogy here. And from there, we actually able to identify gravity of play, where it has some relation to some development of human culture throughout time, where we use reward model, we use the concept of reward frequency being given based on the Skinner model of they call this what I forgot. Mm, I forgot the name, but anyway, Based on this, we actually identify gravity in mind as using the acceleration, where the history of Go development from 9 by 9 to the current 19 by 19 actually leads to decelerating gravity in mind, meaning that at this time people tend to at this time when we refer back to the history of human development throughout the development of this Go board, this is where the agriculture eras are the you know in the rise, meaning that people from nomadic tribe become a permanent civilization. So they develop an agriculture. So they become much more sedentary because of the agriculture eras. But the second phase where Chaturanga, where the ancestor of chess become the modern chess, the gravity mind actually increase because this is where uh you know society move to a faster pace of development, where we have the industrialization eras, where we start to have mechanical machines and computers and so on, and later on leads to faster development between society and also discovery of scientific community. Then when we already define or when we already know something that are objective, right? We want to understand why certain thing we feel that very addictive, why certain thing become very how to say very entertaining, and why certain thing, even though it's difficult, we still enjoy it. So we leads to this kind of motion in mind spectrum where we have momentum, uh, velocity. I forgot this line is what. But the important thing here is that at this region of uh, of the game progress, right? This kind of game actually much more how to say educational, but at the same time very addictive because it's very easy for you to learn this kind of game. Example, uh, horse racing, pachinko, casino, all this kind of game are very easy to learn because the rules are very simple, but yet they are very addictive and uh, very subjective because you need to predict certain thing. It use random as the game mechanics, randomization. But for this kind of game, they have a very strict rule, and some might have less strict rule, but they leads to a very competitive, uh, you know, uh, spectrum of the motion. And later we have sport game as well, and you can notice that chess actually very close to soccer in a way. They both are competitive, yet they have a lot of they require a lot of say skill and very competitive mind, meaning that you have to be very strong-willed mind to actually play this kind of game, to actually be competitive and to win the game. And then we actually apply motion in mind in learning process as well. Try to see. So these are what I said just now. If you consider only the progress, linear progress of the game, it will just be a straight line. So if we uh, make it gamified, so in a way we accelerate this linear process to be faster, and of course by incorporating some challenges, this will be the region where the two meet. So a general activity is linear process represented by displacement when the velocity is constant, you know, and when the gamified experience, when we try to solve it constantly, right? So it's just straight line. But if we gamify the process, meaning that we try to have acceleration constant, but the velocity changes, meaning that sometimes it's high, sometimes it's low. So because of that, This might help the activity to be prioritized or marinate. And when we incorporate some surprise, meaning that certain processes might be gamified, you know, there are changes between how fast you solve the problem, how fast you solve the uncertainty, and how much you solve the uncertainty. So become surprised or frustrated. That adds variety to the learning. So if we map this to the learning process, the objective might be constant. The process can be varied, and of course, this can also help in terms of repetition, practice, brain teaser, and so on. Then, in terms of gamification itself, we map this to motion in mind again and try to relate to flow theory. We find that challenge-based tasks increase engagement, where students can progress relative to their ability. Where at one time, the student might start here, they feel boring or worried, and when we increase the challenge, it leads to engagement. It kind of like makes the student or learner to be aroused. But too much challenge will leads to, anxiety. This region of flow zone actually is anxiety. So sometimes we need to, uh, occasionally return control, meaning that will leads to, uh, upper region by reducing the challenge, but still high risk. So this can be done by, I think the our latest PhD student conduct this by using scaffolding, meaning that it helps provide some support to the learner, maybe some guidance for the solution, so that they can go to this optimal control and feel low risk again. But too much help will lead to, boring or apathy. So in a way, the process will be kind of like a spiral, you know, repeat the process spirally a long time along the timeline. You know? So we apply this in Kahoot to say verify our finding. So the future prospect of this research area will be to expand the horizon of the entertainment AI by, incorporating, not only the genetic intelligence search and simulation, of course include natural language processing, better optimization and reasoning, maybe expert system, and maybe make it much more empathic towards the people that actually use the entertainment product or media, so that we can combine this not only artificial intelligence and AI, but also in the empathic sense of empathy, empathy, empathy computing, if I'm not mistaken. So empathy technology actually is an emerging trend. I think the currently very popular in VR and AR technology. So of course, it depend on what are the perspective or the interaction. For example, you want to focus on self or and others, or you want to focus on social cues and language, or even sometimes based on certain culture or societal norm. So some people might focus on, being empathetic, developing empathy technology, so that people can better understand culture, better understand society perception of certain tasks or behavior, and maybe focus on shared experience. Example like virtual museum, right? So that's one of the application of AR for empathy technology. So how can we make the shared experience much more entertaining? So how this empathic technology can incorporate entertainment science or game informatics into these processes or technology. And then of course we have to consider the context as well. So we need to consider the literal context or our feeling or our perception of the empathy. And then like I said just now, one of the recent technology is the VR, AR, and MR technology, and maybe incorporating AI that are much more emotionally sentient, not just sentient but emotionally sentient. And group performance actually helps in this context as well, in that we might consider incorporating group performance, meaning that because uh, one in a group, not every group can actually, not every member of the group can contribute equally, but each of them can fill a niche, and because of that, uh, they can become better. The cooperation within the group can be better than the group itself. So, how to say, uh, combining multiple part become better than uh, cumulative part. I can't remember the term they use usually for group performance. Anyway, and then we can actually incorporate empathetic design, you know, because I think uh, if you've been in Japan, right, before, you can see that some of the product that they sold, right, helps in terms of recycling and taking care of the environment, because all the packages are very easily open and very easily uh, help the buyer to actually manage the trash by themselves. You know, you can't find this in any other country, especially because they already incorporate this kind of empathetic design. So our country might actually benefit from that by incorporating, this kind of design in the future. So future of embedded entertainment technology might, help, you know, instead of using game informatic to generate the aggregate scoring metric or aggregate game element, so that we can have better passive sensing, personalized experience, better context understanding, and human AI collaboration. Because when we have a good scoring matrices, we can actually support this kind of activity easily for any kind of context, so that we can drive the service or innovation better and become much more empathic. So the technology can be much more experience driven, can be assistive, and provide a holistic experience in any context. So yeah, these are, as you can see, there are some application already, but it's not a holistic, uh, I would say, technology yet. In a way, they solve one problem, so it kind of like a narrow AI problem. So how can we generalize this? So I believe that empathetic entertainment technology could achieve that. So yeah, that's all from me. Sorry again for taking the time longer than it should. So thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Dr. and Akmal. So very informative certain session. Okay, I
Yeah,
think we learned many new things today lah. Actually on gamification, isn't it, in teaching and learning? Okay, so maybe we open any question from the floor. Any question? Maybe we can have two or three questions. Right, Dr. Akmal? Is it okay?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, sure.
So any question from the colleague? Okay, so I have one question, Dr. Akmal. So
Yeah, sure.
regarding the gamification in teaching and learning, isn't it? So,
Mm,
so is it that one widely used in Japan? Maybe because you're in Japan, right? So I mean,
mm-hmm,
whether it may be at university, isn't it? So how
mm-hmm,
the teaching and learning is conducted there?
mm-hmm.
So
In a way, it's not really widely adopted, but it's widely known by most, how to say, practitioner there. And uh, I think Japanese policymaker is starting to make it an official, you know, kind of like a very official structure, so that every level of education actually apply this kind of gamification concept. And they already started by, they call as project-based learning, I think they call now. I think it's very popular in our middle or high school student, right? Doing a very, hands-on project between the student and the teacher, right? So in Japan, they try to incorporate this at every level of education, so that the learning process can be, you know, gamified in a way, so that they can develop not only, how to say, uh, understanding of the topic, but also understanding of, soft skill as well, group coordination, and uh, presentation and so on. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Okay, so okay, any more question? Yeah, we have a question from Dr. Padli.
Yeah.
Okay, okay. Okay. Dr. Akmal can refer in the chat box there.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh,
I'm ready now.
okay, okay, good, good.
Try to. Um, Actually, game industry in Japan are very, are very tightly linked with the research community of Japan. And in a way, their AI research or research group, usually, or association, are very conservative, so that outsider usually doesn't know what they do. But I can say that I have some peek into this kind of research, right? And they actually moving toward making, like I said just now, emotionally sentient AI. So all the game that they develop now, make they try to make the AI much more realistic, much more human-like, and also become, how to say, very assistive in a way, so that that AI kind of like understand the player needs and player, so in a way they develop the NPC, how to say, uh, behavior model. Previously, the the AI are very tightly script by the developer, but now they are much more trained toward understanding the player behavior, so that the game experience become very experience driven. I've seen, I think, the Sega, I think Sega company. We have invited talk last time by one of the researcher, and also uh, uh, say, industry practitioner. They apply this to, forgot the name of the game. It's currently still under development, but in a way that the AI kind of like cooperate with the human player, so that when you play a game, you don't have to wait for other human player to join you. The AI itself can actually play very competent levels that mimic human level, I think, in a way. Uh, I hope I answer your question in a way. So in a way, they are very tightly knit. So they have a very good communication. Usually, the industry will provide the opportunity for the university student to do their internship and also get hired by the company. But they still maintain, the, how to say, the two-way technology transfer between the research and the industry. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. So, is there any more question? Maybe we can have a final question. This one Dr. Fadli just mentioned. Leverage the research. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Japan is very good. Okay. Okay, so I think okay lah. Let me get my last question lah. So my last question
Okay.
is, so between Scopus and imperfect this one lah, side scope or imperfector, isn't it? So
Mm-hmm.
in your based on your experience lah in Japan, isn't it? So
Mm.
they more concentrate on which one, or they haven't concentrate anyone? So which one? They more concentrate on JCR, which is imperfector by WS, or set score by Scopus. So in Japan, how do they consider that one?
Currently, they're moving toward side score because they're trying to, how to say, see the impact of the research directly to the community. How the the research actually being transferred from research institute towards the the bottom thousand, I think they call it. Yeah. So in a way, they use site score as the main cytometric, and now when they try to evaluate, for example, try to see whether you are a good researcher or not, right? You have to post, I think, your FWI. Do you familiar with FWI? Uh, uh, Fields, FCI, sorry, for Field Citation Index, if I'm not mistaken. Now they try to experiment with that to see how Japanese researcher fare compared to other overseas researcher. Yeah.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
So, okay, so I think there's no more questions. So on behalf of the Faculty of Computing and Informatics Semester Sabah, okay, thank you very much to Dr. Akmal for sharing your, I think
Welcome.
it's very good for the first and the second study session. Hopefully we may meet in future, okay, Dr. Akmal, if you
Yeah,
happen to
sure.
come back to Malaysia, okay, maybe you can visit us in Sabah. So, okay, thank you very
Yeah.
much. So, okay, all the best. Assalamualaikum and very good afternoon.
Yeah. Thank you, bro. Thank you very much
Okay,
for everyone. Yeah.
okay.
Assalamualaikum. Yeah.
Salam.